Hey everyone, my name is Chiranjeevi and welcome to my design pattern video tutorial series part 5, and in this video we'll discuss the prototype pattern. So let's get started. The prototype pattern is also a creational design pattern that lets you produce new objects by copying existing ones without compromising their internals. Alright everyone, so it's a creational design pattern which lets you produce new objects by copying the existing ones. So why do we need to copy an existing object? Let's look at the problem. So you have an object and you want to create a duplicate. The first question arises, why do you want to create a duplicate? So the genuine answer to that question would be like, the creation of that object is very expensive. It could be like you are getting the object from a DB transaction or you are fetching the object over the network, which take a high amount of computing resource and a lot of time. So let's say you want a replica of the same object, but you don't want to go through the process of getting into the DB transaction or making the network call again. You just want to copy the object completely. So here's the problem which arises when you want to copy the object. So how would you do it? Firstly, you need to create a fresh object of the same class. Then you have to go through all the fields of the original object and copy their values to the new object. Nice, but there's a catch here. Not all objects can be copied this way. Some of objects can have private fields which are not accessible from the outside. So you need to know exactly how many fields are there in the object, and your copying code will heavily depend on the number of fields and attributes you have in the classes, and you have to copy them one by one by one. Also, since you don't have access to the private members of the class, you actually cannot copy those members because you don't have access to them. So how does prototype pattern solve this problem? Let's have a look at the UML diagram. Alright, so here's our UML diagram. The prototype pattern delegates the cloning process to the object themselves, which means that it declares a common interface for all the objects that allow cloning. It allows cloning objects without tight coupling to their concrete classes. Usually prototype interface contains a single clone method. So as you can see here, we have the prototype interface which exposes one clone method. The implementation of this clone method is similar for all the classes. All these implementing classes need to do is to create a new instance of the same object and copy all the fields to the newer object and return the object. Objects which can be cloned with this method are called prototypes. And especially when your prototype objects which have a very large number of fields, this method can be a better solution for copying the object instead of subclassing the object. Alright, so let's look at how we can implement this in Java. Alright, so let's take a look at the steps we need to implement. So the first step is create an interface named prototype which exposes a clone method. Okay. Then we'll be designing a prototype registry which acts as a cache to hold the prototypical objects. Then we will design a factory method which accepts the arguments and find the correct prototype object from the prototype registry. And whenever we will need a clone for that prototype object, we'll call the clone method on the prototype registry to get the prototype. So let's code this. So here, as you can see, I have already declared an interface called prototype, and which has a clone method which returns a prototype instance. The next thing we need to implement is a prototype registry, which acts as a cache to hold the prototypical objects. Let's go to the prototype registry. So this is our prototype registry class. Here we'll be implementing the cache which will hold the list of prototypes which can be cloned. So let's get started. First of all, we'll need a map which will hold a prototype key and a prototype value. So let's declare a map. And let's quickly declare a constructor for this prototype registry which will instantiate this map. So here we are. Let's add the helper methods which will help us to add prototypes to this prototype registry object. and also add a method to retrieve the clone from the prototype registry. So here we are, our prototype registry class is ready. Let's go ahead and create an implementation for the concrete prototype which will implement the prototype interface. So this is our concrete prototype class where we will be implementing the behavior for the concrete prototype. Let's quickly add a simple field called name to it. And then let's add a constructor which will initialize this name. After that, we'll initialize one more constructor which will take the instance of this class only. Just copy the contents of the object to the current one. Also, let's add the method to get the name. And at the end, we'll have to implement the clone method in this prototype interface, which will override here. Public, and this will return the concrete prototype. So we have designed our all the classes which we need to execute this example. We'll quickly go ahead and add one more method, which will be the main method to execute the program. So what we'll do here is create an instance of the concrete prototype and we'll name it as the original, and we'll assign it the value of test name string. Then we'll create a prototype registry and register this prototype object which needs to be cloned. So we'll do registry.add prototype and we'll name it original and we'll pass the prototype value. Now let's say after some time you need to clone this object. So instead of instantiating, you could actually ask this registry object to provide you clone of the requested object which is already there in the registry. And we can also typecast it to the prototype we need. Let's try to print these two objects. First we'll print the original and then we'll print the clone. So after running this program, this original and this clone should have different objects. So as you can see here, this original and the clone both are referencing to two different objects. But if we take a look at the values inside this original and the clone object, we'll get an exact copy of the members inside it. Right, so as you can see, we're getting test name for both of the original and the clone object. Alright guys, so this is what the prototype pattern means. We have discussed how to implement it, we have discussed the problem it is trying to solve, and we have looked at the UML diagram and also the definition. So once again, prototype pattern is a creational design pattern that lets you produce new objects by copying existing ones without compromising their internals. And if you want to implement one, all you need to do is to follow these 4 steps and you are good to go. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.